Hello, Uta Hagen here of Trans Widow Uta Hagen YouTube channel with my first, or maybe my second, bouquet of roses. And a lot of them are just still in bud. And this is my first, or my almost first, of my favorite lark ascending rose. And we're going to try to keep that somehow in the frame. There we are. And back here are stalks of the allium flowers. It's an onion family garden flower, which the deer don't eat, the woodchucks don't eat because they taste like onions and smell like onions. And they're a really handy filler addition. They come in pink and purple and white. And these are the first ones that bloomed. I found out from a gardening show I watch that it's better to cut the stalks than to believe that if you let them go to seed, they have cute little green seeds in some of these starting. It's better to cut that off and let all the energy go into the bulbs, which look kind of like tulip bulbs, and hopefully they will, reproduce. And I will have, nice big thick clumps of them, especially in places that are unfenced, where the deer and the woodchucks like to eat my garden plants. Okay, so, I've debated about whether or not to address this. This has really, I would say, sucked a lot of energy out of me. And it's going back a couple of months. I was profiled had contact with this reporter, Jane Ridley, from the Daily Mail a few months ago. And they actually wanted to send a crew up here to film me inside of my home. And I did all sorts of tidying up and rearranging so that my house would look really beautiful and homey and cozy and hygge, as we say in Norwegian. And then at the end, her people wanted me to wear pumps and dress up in some kind of dresses that they were going to bring. What size do I wear? And I had this imaginary vision suddenly that they're going to want me to put on a girdle. They're going to want me to wear some tight pencil skirt. I'm 68 years old. I have no intention of letting people tell me how to dress, and wanting me to dress in some way that's super sexy and reminiscent of men in drag. And this sentiment kind of happened to me, 30 years ago, almost 28 years ago, in 1997, when I was in court for that long and difficult and expensive divorce from Neddy. And suddenly, right before one of the last few hearings in court before the divorce was finalized, my attorney wanted me to be sure to wear lipstick. He wanted me to be sure to wear a dress. And, I was like, okay, it really doesn't matter what I wear, because I'm the woman and he's the man dressing as a woman. What? Right? So, but I dutifully wore lipstick, and I'm wearing a little makeup now. But I wasn't going to put on stage makeup and as if I was imitating him. What is that about? Really? What is that about? I would love for people from the Daily Mail to come on in comments and tell me, what is your point here? And at that point, I withdrew. I said, I don't think I can trust you. I just completely withdraw. I don't want to do this. Then later, the filmmaker of our Trans Widow documentary came on, that is Vaishnavi Sundar, she was emailing me and saying, well, Jane Ridley has asked her, to contact me because now they want to do a feature. And this was from Ms. Ridley, too. She said they want to do a feature about Vaishnavi and Behind the Looking Glass. And they had interviewed a different trans widow who appeared and told more of her story in Behind the Looking Glass, which is at Lime Soda Films YouTube channel for free. And many of the subsequent longer profiles are there also. For example, May and Juliet and Allison and so many of us who at least put our voices in there. Some of us had to use animation. I appeared on screen under this pseudonym. So the other trans widow that was supposed to be sort of profiled along with Vaishnavi for this feature on Behind the Looking Glass documentary, she pulled out because her now young adult children made a big objection to this and said, absolutely not, we're going to lose all our friends or something like that. Yeah. And so I was approached again, and I had certain stipulations, but I didn't make the stipulation that before you print this, you have to run it by me, because too often all kinds of made up stuff has been written and published about me. And, I made it clear to Ms. Ridley that I was taking a risk. And the risk being that the trans activists and the men like my ex-husband, there is a contingent of them who are violent, who will figure out a way to find me, and they will do me harm. They might also contact my sons, which already happened once a few years ago. So I was really a bit shocked yesterday to get a notification from Vaishnavi that Jane Ridley and the Daily Mail Online did what Vaishnavi was suspicious would happen, which is that they made her sort of a footnote to all of this, and they decided to kind of exaggerate parts of my story and literally fabricate and make some stuff up in order to get their clicks and tell my story as this big shocking thing. And the thing is, it makes my actual story somewhat delegitimized. For example, it was omitted that I have published my memoir, In the Curated Woods, True Tales from a Grass Widow. They started out their article saying that I call myself a widow. I do not call myself a widow. And I have spoken many, many times about how I wish we really had a different phrase for identifying ourselves than trans widow. But trans widow organically evolved out of the claims of our ex-husbands that their former life is their dead life, their former name is their dead name, all that stuff, which sort of symbolically makes us into a trans widow. None of us are saying I'm a widow just like any other widow, and I find that kind of unforgivable. I spent hours communicating with this reporter, and I also spent hours preparing my data. That is the other thing that wasn't mentioned at all. The Hagen trans widow study. No, not mentioned at all. Not mentioned that I am actually a serious person who is collecting the only data in the world on trans widows. There is no one else, not in the field of psychology, not in the field of psychiatry, no one is collecting data on us and many of the gender world mental health practitioners erroneously believe that so many of us wives stay married to this guy because his transition made him into this happy person, and now it's sort of like being lesbians. No. In my data, I have the information that because of financial constraints, many women stayed, like I did, for over 2 years, or for 5 years, or in the case of Ophelia, you can find 2 or 3 chapters in her profile at my playlist, Trans Widow Testimonies. She stayed for 10 years. Acquiescing, reluctantly to this idea that now she was a lesbian. And then she fell in love with a man because, of course, she's a heterosexual woman. And then her husband, what name did we give him? I can't remember now, but husband then sued her for divorce on the grounds of infidelity in a state where you can get divorced on the West Coast on the grounds of being incompatible, on a no-fault divorce. But no, he had to do that to her. And by the way, he also was an alcoholic, used illegal drugs, was violent, all the stuff. She was so besieged by the glory that this guy gets. He's an academic somewhere in like a science field out on the West Coast, and has this coterie of, sycophants following him, telling him he's just so wonderful. So much so that at one point, someone from the daughter's school knocked on her door and said, well, at so-and-so show that the kids are putting on next week, I'm going to make sure to sit next to, her ex, because you said you are refusing to sit next to him, according to him. Like, talk about intrusive, judgmental, Jane, I'm disappointed, and I'm going to send you a link to this. So these are the data that I went through the process of figuring out the percentages that the Daily Mail neglected to mention at all. Okay, question 6 on my survey is about the coercion for a sex role play whereby the wife is suddenly pretending to be a lesbian with her husband, using equipment and watching sissy hypno porn or various other pornography or something like that, which is supposed to enable, this marriage to continue and is supposed to fulfill a heterosexual woman like me. Okay, so Trans Widow number 68 has just come back with her answers to my survey. Her name is Valerie, her pen name. And so she brought it up to 35%, the coercion. And then in terms of a therapist coercion, many of us didn't accompany the husband to a therapist. I went to his therapist by myself. She tried to coerce me. So 8 of 68 of us had a mental health professional attempting to coerce us to do games in bed. Okay? That's 11%. That's not nothing. And then 37 of 68 of us, he publicly defamed. That's 55%. And then for question 18, it's I have to do a little bit of analysis of this about the man wanting to be called some version of mother for his children or stepchildren. So the 68 women do not all have children. There happen to be 37 children. And some of us had 2 or 3 children. So it's actually more than half. More than half of these men said that they want the child they fathered or had been acting as stepfather of, or even there's a couple of grandfathers in there. They wanted to be called mama, mommy, mutti, mor, that's the Scandinavian for mother. It's, it just goes on like that. And to omit my channel, Trans Widow Ute Heggen, which is my outreach to women who have gone through this, to omit my data and the Heggen survey of trans widows' experiences is, it's just not telling the whole story. And I thought that's what journalism was supposed to do. So now the other thing that I'm aware of is that maybe this reporter knew that the editors at the Daily Mail were going to mess with this. I'm tempted to say the F word, but maybe because of that, she scheduled that this is going to be edited and then released without any, contact of me about whether this is correct. For example, first of all the quotes are not exact quotes from me. In my view of journalism, when you have quotation marks around something, those are the exact words that the person said. All of their quotes of me are paraphrasing. And then they said a ridiculous detail that makes no sense at all. That Neddy supposedly dyed his hair the same color as me to look more like me. Now, in the same article is a photograph from our wedding in which we have almost the same hair color. My hair color was the red in this painting, this watercolor that was taken from a photograph that was taken when I was 18 years old. I was a redhead / strawberry blonde. Neddy was a reddish blonde. And we come from different ethnic backgrounds. His in the Eastern European geography, mine in the Scandinavian and Northern European geography. And now my hair, which is not dyed in any way, comes across as maybe blonde. But just like the grandmother that I take after, Amanda, that is how red hair goes gray. So I don't believe that Neddy ever colored his hair, not to my knowledge. I have never colored my hair because of the frequency that American women dye their hair. It is assumed that my color, which is a little bit more rare than brunette, that I must be dyeing my hair. No. If you see something that looks like dark roots, it's just because I was out in the sun and the longer hair got bleached lighter while I'm out there weeding my garden. So disappointment times 10. I'm just going to do this and then move on and then profile Valerie. I do hope some more trans widows find me. I really want to work towards 100 of them so that it's very easy to see the percentages because, 55 out of 100 is more than half, right? Anyway, I will continue. I will go out and do my transplanting and mulching and gardening and cutting more of my beautiful rose bouquets. The dahlias are just about to start blooming. There are a few buds, and please do like, subscribe, and forward, and feel free to put the link to this in the comments if you happen to be a subscriber to Daily Mail Online. Put the link to this in the comments under that article. Also, I never said vomit. They put that in the title of the article, that I felt like I would vomit when I found his diaries. No, I felt dizzy. I was in shock. I had to sit down. I felt desperate. I felt like my life was crumbling and falling apart. I never said that this made me feel nauseated. Now, when you use a title like that, you make women who have been through a serious traumatic life experience, like me, into complainers. No. No. He didn't dye his hair. I never said I felt like I was going to vomit. They got several things wrong in terms of the chronology. I had my son before we moved to Brooklyn. I didn't say let's start a family when we moved to Brooklyn. No. I had said it a couple of years before that. Please, reporters, the press, get the story right. And to my wonderful viewers and subscribers, plant the flowers and count the butterflies.